I'm 39 now. I've told this story 100 different ways. Quick versions over beers, shorter ones for friends who want the punchline. But tonight, I want to tell the whole thing, the long version, the one with the background you don't always hear. When I was 18, the world felt like a raw, unfinished thing. I'd been the youngest in my family by a lot. My oldest siblings were adults with jobs and lives, and I'd watched them leave the nest like a series of doors closing. My mom left when I was 6, and not the ordinary left to find herself kind. She left for someone else. That left my dad as the whole house, and when his health started going south, mini strokes at first, then worse, everything in my life narrowed down to making sure he had food, doctor visits, the rent. I wasn't exactly equipped to carry that. I was a kid with adult responsibilities, and the textbooks were heavy. I met Dee at 24. I was still 18, rebel yourself raw, and Dee, he was older, charismatic in the way some poisonous things can be. Smooth smile, whispered promises, a voice that sounded like he knew the right things to say. He sold the things people take to forget. He sold me an escape from the loneliness that built up at our house like dust. For a while, it looked like it might be the rescue story. A warm couch, a dog that did tricks for popcorn, someone to split the late shifts and the silence. Muffin, small white mutt with a squeaky bark, was a constant, and I have to admit, the dog made me breathe easier. But the things that are small and charming at first show their teeth later. Dee was the kind of man who built his control like scaffolding. Little rules at first. Don't go out after midnight. Don't keep certain friends. What you wear, what you post. He suggested I give up some habits. Party favors, which for me had been an all too easy way to stop thinking. And I did, which made me feel like I had finally done something right for myself. He said he had my back. He offered me structure. He offered me a place to sleep when my dad's health got worse and we had to move. So I moved in with him and Muffin before I even turned 19. He lied a lot. I later learned lying had been the industry he practiced. Lies to his coworkers, to people he owed money to the women who loved him. But for a while, I thought I was the protagonist in the story we were writing together. That illusion ended messy and sharp. 4 months after I moved in, I came home from a 12-hour night shift. Lights low, dead tired. The kind of exhausted that sits like a weight in your chest. The apartment felt wrong. Pictures that should have been on the mantel were askew. A shirt I knew I'd seen on a chair was on the bedroom floor. Those little displacements are jokes that tell the truth. So I asked. I remember the way his face moved when I asked. Not surprise, but a practiced calm. He confessed. In that same sentence, he told me I was too much and that I had to accept that they had been seeing each other. He tried to frame it like a messy miscommunication. I packed my things in silence. I gave myself a few days to figure out what to do next. He left the apartment to give me space to leave. That part, the space, he was good at thinking would be the end of it. I won't lie. The first feelings after a reveal like that are a mess of indignation, shame, and a cold, bright fury. You replay every memory and see it for what it was. I remember standing in the bathroom, toothbrush in one hand, toothbrush in the other, like both halves of a life balanced awkwardly, and thinking, we made a mess together. Part of me wanted to scream. The other part wanted to disappear. I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to hurt him the way he hurt me. I'm better than that, I told myself. But because I needed a moment that would make me feel alive again. I needed one clean, absurd act that would be mine and mine alone, a petty triumph in the mud. And that's when I saw Muffin. Muffin had this problem. A delicate bladder and the tendency to soil when scared or excited. I'd seen it once at the shelter when she'd been startled by a thunderhead and peed 5 minutes straight into a cardboard box. It was humiliating and kind of heartbreaking, but in that moment, it looked like the perfect instrument of small chaos. Not revenge that ruined someone's life, not something that would wind up in court, just a prank that would make him touch the reality of what he'd created. So I did it. I don't remember plotting for long. I made sure Muffin had a big walk, chicken strips for dinner, and then, the little trick, I took her to the couch area where he loved to sit, the chair he used like armor. I teased her, played fetch in the living room, ran my fingers over her fur, made her excited. I let the small, humiliating thing happen all over the place. The couch where he liked to plop with a beer, the throw pillows with his initials, the bedspread, the carpet. I watched the wet spread like a map and felt something rising in me like a hot, cleansing laugh. I cleaned my cheeks with the cuffs of my shirt before I left, gave Muffin one last treat, and walked out. I gave him space to find the mess. I imagined him coming home, the look on his face, the questions he'd ask the floor. I wanted him to feel the inconvenience of being the dishonest person for once. It's petty, sure, it is childish, but it was also exactly what I could offer myself, a small, controlled chaos to match the internal storm. What happened after is part of the messy truth. He was furious, of course. He yelled. He accused me of being cruel, said I'd stooped to a low level. Let him have his indignation. In truth, the dog pee stunt didn't change the arc of his life. He'd made choices that would catch up with him later. Debts, enemies, and the hollow of a reputation that starts to echo in empty rooms. But that week, while he squeaked in fury about cleaners and bleach and damaged upholstery, I slept better. I didn't need him to beg forgiveness or to fall apart. I needed a small sanity, the knowledge I'd done something entirely without his consent. It was mine. I want to be clear about boundaries here. This is a story of escaping a toxic situation, not one about celebrating cruelty. In the months after, I moved out to a friend's place, found some part-time work while trying to finish community college classes. My dad's health was the anchor. He never stopped needing care. I learned how to navigate adult systems, social services, a landlord who insisted on references, cops who patrolled with tired eyes. I learned to be steady for someone else, and, slowly, for myself. It wasn't dramatic in the Hollywood way. There was no big showdown or cinematic justice. He continued on with his own problems. For a while, I was tempted to go scorched earth, to expose every lie, to humiliate him in the same way I'd been humiliated. But the months that followed taught me a different shape of revenge. The slow, stubborn work of building a life where the old wounds don't have purchase. I went to therapy. That line makes a lot of people roll their eyes. Therapy is trendy now, but it saved me. A counselor helped me map how the early abandonment, the pressure of caring for an ailing father, and the later cycles of substance use and codependence had all braided together. We untied those knots bit by bit. I stopped using party favors. I started answering the calls from my dad, even when the world felt too heavy. I learned to say no first, and then yes, and to choose both consciously. There's another piece everyone wants to know. The dog? Muffin. Did she pay any price for being the co-conspirator? I took care of her. She was a living creature in the middle of a messy human conflict. I took her to the vet, made sure she was healthy, and later rehomed her to a friend who gave her the soft, steady life she deserved. The guilt of weaponizing a defenseless animal clung to me like damp clothes. I still feel it sometimes. People ask if it was cruel. And it was. But even cruelty can exist in the same story as survival. And I own that. Years later, I sat on a porch in a tiny apartment with my father, now living with me, and we ate bad takeout and watched TV with the volume turned down. My life had the ordinary peace I'd once dismissed as boring. I had a job with morning hours, weekends off, community college classes completed, a small circle of reliable friends. I had a rhythm I could trust. I had, weirdly, gratitude. People think I am lying when I say the dog pee revenge felt like a turning point. But sometimes a small absurd act, a prank that forces someone to clean his own mess, is like a signal flare. It says, I refuse to be your doormat anymore. I want to be honest about how healing works. It is not linear. There were nights I drank more than I should have. There were times I would ride past his old apartment just to make sure he was really gone from the playlist of my life. There were rows with family, apologies given and accepted, and sometimes refused. But those were the edges of a map I was slowly filling in. The real revenge, the part that lasted, was the steady work of being present. For my father, for my classes, for the friends who fed me when my pantry ran out. That's where I rebuilt myself. Sometimes I think about him. Not much. People who are toxic often fade into background noise. But when I do, I remember the way his smile folded and how empty some promises were. I remember Muffin, too, frantic and shaking, and the absurdity of that week. The indignation, the cleanup, the way laughter bubbled up from a place you'd thought dead. I remember learning to love myself slowly and clumsily. If you're listening and you're in the middle of something like that, the gaslighting, the confusion, the small, cruel jokes that masquerade as love, I'll tell you what I tell friends who call me at 2 a.m. You don't owe the person who hurt you a spectacle. You don't need to punish them until they're ruined. Sometimes the sweetest thing you can do is leave, get help, and make a life they can't step back into. That life is the revenge that matters. And yes, if you want the petty side of the story, months later I heard that he'd thrown the couch away. A neighbor said he muttered something about bleach and a ruined mattress. I smiled. A small, private thing. The dog had moved on. So had I. We were all better for it.